We have all been there. It is 2 a.m., your eyes are burning, and you swear to yourself that you are going to bed. But then the countdown timer appears on the screen, and before you even realize what your hand is doing, you've clicked Next Episode. You made a choice, but it certainly didn't feel like a conscious decision. That late-night TV binge points to a strange tension in neuroscience. The conscious you, the voice inside your head that feels like it's making deliberate decisions, is largely an illusion. Look at this network. Inside your skull are 90 billion interconnected neurons, firing away to manage your movements, memories, and survival. But only a tiny fraction of that activity is illuminated by conscious awareness. The vast majority of your brain operates completely in the dark. To figure out what's really pulling the strings, we have to look closely at moments when the brain's autopilot glitches. What we find is that the comforting sensation of free will is mostly just a story the brain tells itself to make sense of physical actions it has already taken. Take sleepwalking. Without any conscious input at all, a sleeping person can stand up, navigate a pitch-black living room, make a sandwich, and walk back to bed without tripping. This happens because the brain doesn't sleep all at once. During an episode, the visual and motor processing centers are wide awake and active, but the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for your self-awareness and deliberate choices, is completely powered down. Sleepwalkers show us how highly capable the brain is in the dark, but to see how divided the mind can actually be, we have to look at patients who have undergone split brain surgery. To treat severe, life-threatening epilepsy, doctors will sometimes cut the corpus callosum. That is the thick bundle of nerve fibers acting as a high-speed communication bridge between the left and right hemispheres. Severing that bridge literally traps two independent operating systems inside a single skull. Without that connection, the two halves cannot coordinate. Researchers have observed one of a patient's hands trying to button a shirt while the other hand violently unbuttons it. In lab tests, the two hands can even independently draw completely different pictures at the exact same time. The you that feels like a single, unified person is really an illusion crafted by multiple, distinct biological systems that are normally just very good at cooperating. Even when those internal systems are communicating perfectly, your choices are being steered by hidden emotional hardware. A region called the insula acts as an emotional thermostat. It generates the sudden, visceral gut feelings of guilt that stop you from acting entirely selfishly in a social setting. Outside of your own head, your brain is constantly scanning and mimicking the people around you. It quietly adjusts your posture, your speech, and your choices to synchronize with the social expectations of your peers. Look at these severe dry rations from the 1944 Dutch hunger winter. Extreme starvation caused intense trauma, physically rewriting biological instructions. Decades later, researchers discovered that the victims' children and grandchildren inherited altered metabolisms directly linked to that famine. We can track how this works in a lab. Scientists trained mice to fear the smell of almonds by pairing the scent with a shock. Those mice grew extra scent-detecting neurons in their noses. Surprisingly, their offspring were born with those exact same excess neurons already wired into their biology. The decisions you make today are heavily pre-programmed by an invisible web of internal chemistry, peer pressure, and the inherited trauma of your ancestors. If your hardware, your friends, and your grandparents are keeping their hands on the steering wheel, how do you know which actions are actually yours? Neuroscientists test this using a device called a transcranial magnetic stimulator, or TMS. By firing a highly focused magnetic field directly into a volunteer's motor cortex, researchers can physically force the subject's finger to twitch involuntarily. When the magnet fires randomly, the volunteer knows the machine caused the twitch. But when researchers trigger the magnetic pulse at the exact millisecond the subject vaguely intended to move, the subject's brain claims 100% credit for the action. The brain observes the body, checks for a loosely aligned thought, and drafts a retrospective story to convince itself it was in charge the whole time. Human agency is a remarkably fragile sensation. It is a post-game highlight reel your brain generates to make you feel like the author of your own life. Realizing that you are a messy mashup of biology, social syncing, and fabricated memories can trigger an existential crisis. But letting go of our obsession with conscious control is actually one of our greatest biological advantages. When researchers put professional jazz musicians and freestyle rappers inside brain scanners, they found achieving peak creative brilliance requires actively shutting down the prefrontal cortex. You turn off the conscious decision maker to enter a true flow state. We see the exact same thing in sports. If you ask a highly trained athlete to actively think about the mechanics of their wrist while shooting a basketball free throw, their performance actively degrades. Injecting conscious control into a practiced skill ruins it. The vast, silent machinery operating below the surface is still you. Understanding that your brain functions brilliantly on autopilot gives you permission to stop overthinking every move and navigate an unscripted world with confidence. So, who do you think is really in control of your decisions? Let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed diving into the hidden mechanics of your mind, hit that like button, share this with a friend who overthinks, and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.